When I married Amy, I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into. I didn't realize that I was actually marrying her sister, Jill. At least, that's how it seemed to me. The thing is, when I first met Amy, Jill's husband, Ron, was away on a business trip in Singapore. Ron works at a bank in that city and had been sent there for several years. Apparently, he was in line for a big promotion when he returned. Jillian, of course, went with him, so when I met Amy and fell in love with her, I had no idea how close the two sisters were. I knew that right after we met, Amy went to Singapore for a month or so to visit her sister, and when she came back, she talked about nothing but Jill and Ron for weeks. Anyway, Amy and I were happily married for almost 2 years when Ron and Jill came back to England. I didn't think much of it when they found a nice house on our street. And at first, I didn't notice how much time they spent at our house or how often I'd come home to find a note from Amy saying we were having dinner at Jill's. She never called me at work or anything like that. Just a note on the fridge. Dinner at Jill's. Okay, Jill is a nice girl. But to be honest, Ron, in my opinion, is a complete nobody. He embodies everything I don't like in life. He is, or rather he was, because he's getting on in years, a yuppie. He works at a bank. No, not a bank on Main Street. No, he works at one of those banks that buy and sell money on the so-called international currency markets. I didn't know that. I think there's something immoral about buying and selling money and making huge profits from it. Anyway, this isn't the place to express my prejudices. Suffice it to say that I had to learn to tolerate Ron and his business associates. On the other hand, he had to put up with my friends, whom I managed to persuade to come to Amy's and my parties after they got to know Ron and his friends. Once I got used to the guy, he wasn't so bad. He just thinks too highly of himself. Life with Amy was pretty good. But after Jill and Ron came back, our sex life took a bit of a downturn. There was no more opportunity for quickies when I came home from work. There was no sex anywhere, anytime, mainly because Jill was always around. When she was at our place, she rarely left before midnight, and if Amy went to Jill's, she would come back after midnight. I got up at 5 in the morning to get to work, so there wasn't much time for sex except on weekends. Wait, I think I should tell you a little about Amy. She's 32, about 5 feet 5 inches, with long blonde hair. She's slim with perfect breasts. She'll never need implants. Maybe she's a little curvy in the back, but she takes care of herself, and when she feels like it, she spends some time at the gym to stay in shape. Jill is Amy's twin sister, and they always go to the gym together. God, I don't think they do anything separately, including going to the bathroom when we leave the house. But you all know that women always hold hands when they go to the bathroom. Anyway, by the time we had been married for 6 years, I was a little annoyed that Jill and Ron were with me all the time. Oh, I didn't mention that Amy was married before she met me. Now I wonder if her first husband was as patient as I am, and if he was annoyed by Jill and Ron hanging on him all the time. I was looking for any way to separate the two girls, at least for the weekend, when fate played what I thought was a funny joke on me. My old aunt died. To be honest, I had almost forgotten that the old lady existed. But she was so kind that she left me her little house in South Wales. It was a tiny place with 1 bedroom and a bathroom upstairs and a small living room, kitchen downstairs. I thought it was the perfect place to relax, and of course there was no room for Jill and Ron. I'm not sure Amy was thrilled with the place at first, but she soon fell in love with it. At first I thought we were back on track. Maybe we would live together and start a family. Having been through a divorce, Amy was a little cautious about having children. We started going to South Wales about once a month for the weekend. Then one Friday I came home from work and found the familiar note on the fridge door. Cowboy, Jill and I are going away for the weekend. Boys, behave yourselves while we're gone, and don't get up to any nonsense with Ronnie. I saw the way the girls were looking at you at the golf club. Amy, what about the cowboy? I'd rather not say, but I'll tell you to make you happy. When I was younger, I used to ride horses. I gave it up when I married Amy because she never understood what was so interesting about horseback riding. The only people she ever saw on horses were cowboys on TV, so she insisted that I was a failed cowboy. That's where the nickname came from, which, unfortunately, many people started using to refer to me. Well, if you can't beat them, join them. Now I answer to the name Cowboy. Ron showed up at my house when I got back from the office and found a similar note from Jill. I could see he was as upset as I was that the girls had left without us. To avoid being alone with Ron that evening, I suggested we go to the golf club for dinner. We spent almost the entire weekend there. Of course, this had its drawbacks, as Ron is completely useless at snooker, but he's better at golf than I am, so I was able to win back the money I lost to him on the course. Did I show my anger when Amy and Jill came back without telling me they were going to the cottage? Like an idiot, no, I didn't. I loved Amy. So on Sunday evening when she came back, I played the role of the loving husband. Oh yes, Amy tried to kill me and wore out the bed that night. Hey, how unusual. Amy couldn't get enough of me that night. I had to take Monday off work because I was completely exhausted. Amy, of course, left for her sister's, as I thought, early Monday morning. I was still in bed at 3 p.m. when Amy returned with Jill. Ron was with them. Apparently, Jill had also tried to kill him, so he took the day off, too. 2 weeks later, Amy and I spent another weekend at the cottage. We had a wonderful time. Being at the cottage without Jill and Ron was like being on our honeymoon all over again. I looked forward to our little trips there, even if they were exhausting. I must admit that I was surprised and angry when, 2 weeks later, I returned home on Friday evening to find another note from Amy. She had gone away with Jill for the weekend again. I can't say that Ron was very happy about it, but like a fool, I let it slide again. However, I noticed that Ron didn't take it as lightly as I did. He didn't say anything, but by that time I knew the guy well enough to almost hear the little wheels turning in his head. But you have to understand Ron and how he is. Like I said, he's a jerk. Well, maybe I didn't say that, but he is. He wasn't so much annoyed that Jill was going away for the weekend without him. I think he was annoyed about where she was going. The cottage belonged to me, and Ron didn't like that. That was his problem. He was a big shot, working in the city and making a lot of money. While I was missing my wife and putting up with Pratt, he was more upset that the girls had gone to Amy's and my cottage. It was the same when the girls came back. Both of them tried to smother us with love, and after that it became the norm. Every weekend, either Amy or I, or Amy and Jill, would go to the cottage. This continued until Ron dropped a bombshell on us that he had splashed out and bought a villa in Spain. I understood his motives. He had outdone me with the cottage. There was no way I could afford a villa in Spain. The problem was that getting to the south of Spain wasn't as easy as driving down the M4 motorway. Jill and Ron, okay, often with Amy and me thrown in for good measure, would fly out there for a week or so. This didn't really affect our trips to South Wales with Amy, nor did it affect the girls' trips there. Okay, some of you less trusting folks might ask what the girls were doing in South Wales without their husbands. To be honest, I'm absolutely certain that Amy didn't do anything she shouldn't have. The cottage was in a small village, and Amy and I were pretty well known there. The problem with small villages is that everyone knows everyone else's business and can't keep their mouths shut. So don't worry, I heard about all the minor misdemeanors in the village pub, no matter how insignificant they were. And they were. If someone bought the girls a drink at the hotel dance in town, I heard about it in the pub. I knew the names of all the guys they danced with and even the taxi driver who took the girls home after the dance. Sometimes I was told about unfamiliar cars parked near the cottage before I even got to the pub. So in that respect, I had nothing to worry about. God, I knew everything. From the moment they arrived to the moment they started packing their things in the car to go home. I knew not only which flea markets or antique shops they visited, but also what trinkets they bought there and how much they paid for them. Interestingly, by the time they returned to their home in London, These things somehow became cheaper. So, as you can see, I wasn't worried about what was happening in South Wales. But I can't say the same about the next shock Amy had in store for me. The announcement that Amy and Jill were going to spend a couple of weeks at a villa in Spain was made to Ron and me when we were all having dinner at a restaurant one evening. To Ron's credit, he took it calmly and even supported the girls. Maybe he wanted to gloat. Now he could play the big man with a house on the sunny coast. The girls flew out the following weekend. 2 weeks later, they returned and told us what a wonderful time they had had. That evening, Amy tried to kill me again, and on Monday morning, I missed work again. A few weeks later, Jill and Ron flew to Spain for a week. It was nice to be alone with my beloved wife, but I could see that she missed her sister. The rest of the year passed as usual. The girls or Amy and I went to the cottage every weekend. Jill and Ron went to Spain for Christmas. Much to Amy's disappointment, I refused to go, saying I wanted to spend the holidays with my family. In the end, Amy agreed with me, and we went to her parents' house too. Around the following Easter, Amy announced that she and Jill were going to Spain for a couple of weeks. Neither Ron nor I could go with them because we were too busy at work. The girls came back with beautiful tans and raved about how they spent almost the entire time in Spain sunbathing while Ron and I sat at home in the rain. Yes, Amy was trying to kill me with sex again. I started thinking it was time to check my life insurance policies to see if Amy had recently increased the death benefit. About a month later, Ron and Jill left for a week at their villa. I started to really enjoy their absence. I had my wife all to myself for a whole week. But Jill and Ron had only been gone a couple of weeks when Amy and Jill said they were coming back. To be honest, I was very angry and let Amy know it. At first, she said her tan was almost gone, and she was jealous of Jill. Then she said Jill was going even if Amy didn't, and she couldn't let her sister go alone. In the end, I gave in, and they left on Saturday morning. On Monday at work, I finally couldn't take it anymore. A group of young guys were crowded around one of the computers making the kind of comments young guys usually make when they're watching porn. Out of curiosity, I went over to see what was going on. The guy had opened a porn site, but that wasn't what caught my attention. I saw 2 small triangles of white skin on the girl's chest. She was beautifully tanned, like Amy when she came back from Spain at Easter. But for some reason, I didn't remember those triangles that were supposed to cover her breasts. Come to think of it, I didn't remember seeing a triangle where Amy's thong should have been. There was a communal pool in that damn villa, and the girls weren't allowed to sunbathe naked. At least not alone, and I didn't like the idea of my wife being naked in public. I went back to my desk, but I didn't get much done that day. Amy wasn't the type to lie naked by a communal pool. God, I doubt the other residents would have tolerated it. So where had she been when she got so tanned? The problem nagged at me all day. Later, I came up with the only answer I could think of. The girls had gone to the villa with the private pool. The problem was that the only person I could remember who had a private pool was the major. He was an old man, at least 65 or 70. But then I remembered something else. I remembered Ron commenting on the bulge in the major's shorts. I bet he was a real Casanova in his day, Ron had said to me, and suddenly I thought, I'm not so sure about was Ron, my boy. He looked pretty fit and could still be very active at 65, and there's Viagra these days. I called and booked a plane ticket right from work, then went to my boss and told him I was taking a few days off. For some reason, he didn't ask why. Maybe it was the look on my face. I rushed home, threw a few things in a bag, and barely made the afternoon flight out of Gatwick. My cell phone rang as I stood at the car rental desk. It was already 7:30 in London. I looked at the number. It was Amy. I didn't answer because if I picked up, she might hear voices speaking Spanish. I still had a long drive to the villa ahead of me. If Amy suspected I was in Spain, she and Jill would have enough time to organize everything. You know what I mean. I turned on the recording once I was settled in the rental car and didn't hear any extraneous noises that would prevent me from calling Amy back if necessary. I pressed play. Cowboy, where the hell are you? Ronnie just called and said you haven't come home from work yet. He's waiting to go to the golf club, poor guy. Give him a call, will you? I think he's worried. Then she hung up. No, I love you. No mention of her being worried about me. Just that Ron was worried. I was furious. I turned off my phone and drove an hour to the villa. I arrived just in time to see Amy and Jill running out the front door and getting into the mayor's convertible. Jill sat next to him and Amy in the back. They drove off, and I followed at a distance in my rented seat. On the coastal road, they turned into a rather touristy restaurant and nightclub. That suited me fine, as the place was packed with tourists. After waiting for them to sit down, I followed them inside. The bar was on a higher level than the main hall, with a dance floor and a stage. When I entered, a traditional Spanish flamenco show was in progress. I noticed the girls and the major sitting at a table near the dance floor. They were just being served their food. At first, I was glad that Jill was sitting next to the major and Amy was across from them, but then I noticed that the fourth plate hadn't been cleared away. Then a guy came over and sat down next to Amy. I sat down at a table at the edge of the balcony where the bar was and watched them eat. When the dancing started, I saw Jill and the major get up first. I thought Amy had told the guy she didn't want to dance, but later, after a couple more drinks, she got up and danced with him to the fast music. However, when the slow dances started, she quickly returned to her seat. As for Jill, she was kissing the major like a crazy teenager. It was obvious to me that Amy was trying to keep the guy she was dancing with from getting too close. I was about to go downstairs and interrupt the fun when all hell broke loose. Spanish police officers stormed into the restaurant, and chaos reigned for a few minutes until I, like everyone else, realized that there had apparently been a bomb threat, and we needed to leave the premises for safety reasons. You won't believe it, but the girls and the major walked right past me without recognizing me. I turned away as they passed, but tried to bump into the guy Amy had been dancing with as he followed them out. All four of them were standing in the parking lot talking. I can't read lips, but it seemed to me that Jill and the major were trying to convince Amy to go with the other guy. 10 minutes later, I saw that Amy had agreed and was walking toward the guy's car. It was time to act, or my marriage would be ruined, at least if it wasn't already ruined. I got into the seat, crossed the parking lot, and stopped in front of the guy's Mazda just as he was about to drive away. I just sat there looking at Amy while the guy yelled profanities at me, telling me to get out of the way and waving his arms around. I saw the fear on Amy's face when she realized who was driving the seat. She screamed so loud that Jill and the police heard her. A few minutes later, the Spanish police headed in our direction. Strangely, the closer they got, the more nervous the guy became. Amy opened the car door and got out, and I saw the alarm on her face. When she started walking toward me, I put the car in gear and drove out of the parking lot. After driving a short distance, I turned onto a side street and stopped, watching the main road. Soon, a Mazda sped by, followed by a Mercedes. I noticed that both girls were sitting in the back seat of the Mercedes, and Jill was sitting in the front seat next to the major, and they were heading toward the restaurant. This time I didn't follow them. I figured they were returning to the villa. When I got there, the major was just leaving in his Mercedes, alone. I turned onto a side street where I could park and watch the villa. Then I settled in for the night. Out of curiosity, I turned on my cell phone. Hey, he's gone crazy. Amy called me 6 times before giving up and apparently going to bed. I spent an uncomfortable night in the small seat. Around 8 in the morning, the major pulled up in his Mercedes. I have to say, at that point, the situation became a little comical. He knocked on the door and Jill opened it. For a moment, it looked like he was going to enter the villa, but Jill stopped him. Then they both started looking around. I realized they were looking for me, but for some reason they weren't looking at the hill where I was. I think they decided I might be in one of the neighboring villas. It would have been the perfect place to spy on them. Amy joined them, and from the looks of it, an argument broke out inside. I noticed that several neighbors were listening, People were walking back and forth and pointing. Then I saw Amy take her cell phone out of her jeans pocket and press a few buttons. The sudden ring of my phone in the car caught me off guard. Amy was obviously trying to call me again. I switched it to voicemail, but Amy didn't leave a message. She put her phone away and went back to yelling at Jill. I don't know how long they stood there, but it must have been about an hour before a taxi pulled up and, to my surprise, Ron got out. God, I wish I could have heard what they said. Ron took Jill aside for a few minutes, then came back and talked to Amy. The major looked a little uncomfortable. Then Ron surprised everyone by walking over to the other villa to talk to the guy who had been watching this comedy for most of the morning. 10 minutes later, Ron returned, walking like a man on an important mission. He walked straight up to the major and punched him in the nose. The major fell like a sack of coal. I got the impression that he had no right to hold the rank of major. Any military man would have seen Ron's punch coming a mile away. Ron shouted something to the girls, then got into the taxi that was waiting for him and drove away just moments before the police arrived. The whole scene turned into a complete pantomime. 2 police officers got out of their car and saw Amy and Jill crying on each other's shoulders. The major was staggering, blood streaming from his nose. Several neighbors were apparently trying to give him first aid, explaining to the 2 Spanish police officers what the hell had happened. As soon as the ambulance arrived, the 2 police officers raised their hands, got into the police car, and drove away. The ambulance took the major away, and the neighbors escorted Amy and Jill back to the villa. A little later, the guy came out and drove up in his car. I watched as the girls' suitcases were loaded into the car and driven away. I assumed they were going to the airport. I had a problem. If I went to the airport now, I would most likely run into the girls and possibly Ron, and I wasn't in a hurry to do that. I wanted Amy to suffer a little. The only option was to go to another airport, which is what I did. The nearest airport with a flight to London was more than 100 miles away, so it took some time to find unfamiliar roads. I had to stay another night because I couldn't buy a plane ticket. So on Thursday afternoon, I took a bus from Heathrow to Gatwick to pick up my car. In the car, I was able to charge my cell phone, which had died the day before. I had a lot of voice messages, and I was just about to listen to them when the damn phone rang, making me jump. The display said it was my father calling. I knew it was bad because Dad doesn't like cell phones, but he was calling from the one I insisted he leave in the car in case it broke down. "Hi, Dad. How are you?" "What the hell's going on, son?" my father asked. "Amy was here this morning asking if we knew where you were." "Amy and I are having some problems, Dad. Don't worry, Mom." "Worry?" Amy was crying. Her eyes were red. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Dad. There's something wrong with Amy. Tell me, was Jill with her?" "No, Amy was alone." "But what do you mean, there's something wrong with Amy?" "That's the problem, Dad. I don't know what she's hiding. But I think if I pressure her long enough and don't tell her I know, she'll either tell me the truth or leave me, and to be honest, I'm starting to think I don't care what she does." "Come on, son. You can't throw away a good marriage over something like that." "Why do you think it's a good marriage, Dad? My marriage to Amy has been very one-sided. The most important person in Amy's marriage has always been her sister Jill." "Oh, I didn't know that. I knew they were close, but not that close." "Amy has to decide who she wants to spend her life with, Jill or me. But first, I have to find out what they're up to. So if Amy is still there, don't say anything to her, or we won't have a chance to save our marriage." "All right, son. I promise Mom and I won't interfere. When will you be home?" "I'm at the airport now. Tell Amy to be home when I get there, or I'll just pack my things and leave." "Don't be foolish, son." "I have to pressure her, Dad. Amy has to think she's going to lose me. I have to find out if she wants to save our marriage." "I think I understand what you're trying to do, son. But you're playing a dangerous game. You could lose her." "Maybe I'm too late, Dad, and the game is already half lost and I haven't even started playing. Maybe I've already lost." Dad hung up, and I drove home. On the way, my cell phone rang several times. Amy's number appeared twice on the screen, and the last time, it was our home phone number. I didn't answer. When I pulled up to the house, Amy opened the door and just stood there on the porch. I got out of the car and walked past her into the house without saying a word. I went straight to our bedroom and grabbed the suitcase Amy had just used on her trip to Spain. I dumped the contents on the floor and started packing my clothes into it. "What are you doing? My God, let's talk about this." "Come on, Amy, you start." "I was just dancing with a guy, honestly." "So, where were you going in his car?" "You saw that the nightclub was closed because of a bomb threat. Sean was just driving me back to the villa." "Why didn't you go with Jill and the Major? That's how you ended up at the nightclub, isn't it?" "Because Jill and the Major were going to his house. That's why." "Didn't you want to?" "No. Jill was going to sleep with him. But I think you know that." "So you were going to sleep with another jerk at Jill's villa?" "No. How could you think I would do that? I would never do anything like that, and you know it." "You wouldn't?" "No, you know I wouldn't." "No. Do I know what you were doing behind my back, Amy? Tell me. Was I supposed to expect that my loving wife would be lying naked by some jerk's pool, sunbathing? Was I supposed to expect that my wife would be showing everyone her most intimate parts?" "Oh, God, how did you find out?" "Come on, if you showed him your body, how far did you go? Did he put sunscreen on you?" "No, Jill put it on my back. Jeff, the Major, put it on her. Look, I know it was wrong to sunbathe naked at Jeff's, but the first time I was drunk. We went there for the day. I didn't know Jill was having an affair with Jeff." "Are you sure?" "Listen, Amy, I'm at my limit. If I catch you lying, I'm leaving, and it's over between us. So decide what you want. Are you going to be honest with me, or am I leaving?" "I'm sorry, I lied. Jill has been seeing Jeff since last year when we first went there. God, she even told me she spent some time with him when she was there with Ron. Ron went out on a boat, fishing or something. Jill gets seasick, so she slipped away to meet Jeff." "And who were you with when Jill was with Jeff?" "To be honest, no one. I was just the third wheel. God, they never had sex or anything like that in front of me. But of course, I knew what they were doing. They would go into Jeff's bedroom, and I would stay by the pool." "So, besides Jeff, no one else has seen you naked?" I asked this question in what I thought was a threatening tone. I hoped I made it clear that I already knew the answer. "Well, yes. Jeff's friends came over a couple of times and saw Jill and me naked. Look, the first time I took off my bikini, I was drunk, and it was just Jill and Jeff there. Jill took hers off and talked me into taking mine off. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I was drunk. After I did it the first time, I didn't see the point in being shy. It was just Jeff, and he had already seen me naked. And then one time I fell asleep naked under an umbrella. When I woke up, there were 2 other guys there. God, I was so embarrassed that I covered myself with a towel. One of them came over and said I had a beautiful body and I shouldn't hide it. I think he wanted to talk to me. I told him it was my body and mine alone. I think he got the hint." "He didn't say or do anything else?" Amy blurted out without thinking. "Yes, he did. He grabbed my towel and said he didn't want to touch me, just look. I put on my bikini and told him he wouldn't see anything else." "And that was the only time?" "No, I think you know that's not true. A couple more times, some boys and girls came over to Jeff's house. The girls all took their clothes off as soon as they came out to the pool. I don't know. I guess I got used to the idea of being naked. No one paid any attention to me, so I stayed naked too, but to be honest, no one touched me. Except for Jill and another girl who put sunscreen on my back. Not a single man, I swear." "I find it hard to believe that no man touched your body. I certainly find it hard to believe." "Well, there were times when I had to tell some of them not to touch me, but I have my little friend." Amy reached into her purse and pulled out something that looked like a short metal rod about 6 inches long with a round tip on one end. "My God, what is that thing?" "Don't be silly, dear. It's my leveler. Amy flicked her wrist and the rod shot out, reaching a length of about half a meter. It's the same kind of baton the police use. Small, inconspicuous, but extremely effective. I bought it in Barcelona. When guys see it, they immediately keep their distance. One blow can break an arm. God, is that legal in this country? I don't know, but it works. Once Jeff threw a party, and one guy said he wouldn't take no for an answer. Jeff told me later that I broke his arm. After that, I earned a reputation, and all the guys always treated me like a lady. Why did you get involved with those jerks in the first place? I couldn't leave Jill alone. I love my sister, but she acts like an idiot sometimes. God, if I didn't try to keep her in line, she'd be working for a pimp by now. Jill will never be able to keep her legs together. Does Ron know what she's like? I think he does. I think he's caught her a few times in the past. God, you can't be her bodyguard for the rest of your life. You think I don't know that? I'm not stupid. I knew what you thought when you saw me in the car with Sean. At that moment, I thought I was going to die. But Sean just gave me a ride home, honestly. Oh, he'd like to be my friend. But I put him in his place last year. Now he just flirts with me, and then acts like I broke his heart. Jeff was having a party that night, and I was tired. I was trying not to take any chances. There would be a lot of drinking at the party. I try not to get drunk around Jill's friends. Sean shows off a little, but he knows me well. God, the poor guy almost shit himself when you blocked him. At first, he thought it was the police. I don't think he wanted the police to see him. So you're saying you've never cheated on me? Yes. Since we got married, I haven't done anything more than kiss another man. Are you sure? I told you I wouldn't tolerate lies. Amy thought for a moment. Oh shit, no, that's not true. Thomas Evans. Jill is dating his brother, David. You mean she's sleeping with him? Yes. In my bed in the cottage? Oh God, no, it's my bed, you know that. I think they used the blanket on the floor in the living room. I always went to bed, so I don't know for sure. Jill took a shower before going to bed. And Thomas? Oh shit, yes, Thomas. Well, one night I had too much to drink. I promised myself I'd never do that again with Jill around. I was dancing with Thomas at the hotel. David drove us home in his car, and on the way, Thomas and I, well, we kissed. Listen, I was drunk, and for a moment I thought I was with you. Don't ask me why, I don't know, I told you I was drunk. God, David is so much like you. I have to admit that's true, but I didn't tell Amy that. Go on, Amy, girl. It's time you let go of the past. Excuse me? My God, how do you know what Jill said to me in the car that night? You'd be surprised what I know about you and your sister, Amy. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I love you, please don't leave. Well, one of us has to go. Amy was terrified. Either your sister or me, choose, and please decide quickly. I decided this back in Spain at the villa and on the plane home. I told Jill that I wanted her out of my life. I told her that if she ever took my husband away from me again, I would probably kill her. Was it the same with your first husband? Well, not exactly. I caught him with Jill in my bed. My God! And you forgave her? Yes. She convinced me that he seduced her. I was a fool to believe her. God, girl, are you stupid? Your sister sleeps with every man she meets, and you believe her when she says your husband seduced her? Well, not exactly, but he was cheating on me, so I couldn't trust him anymore, right? And Jill was my sister, so I forgave her in the end. You know, I think the first thing we need to do tomorrow is take you to a damn psychiatrist. Amy, I never thought I'd say this to you, but sometimes you can be a damn stupid bitch. I know, but I'm your stupid bitch. Listen, in the future, are you going to tell me when I do something stupid? Hey, wait. If you knew about Jill and David, why the hell didn't you do anything? Maybe I'm stupid too, but I never liked Ron. That bastard always pissed me off. As long as you behaved yourself, I didn't care. But I know everything you did in South Wales, don't worry. Bill? Yes. Isn't it time we started a family? Maybe. I love you. Well, then take off your damn clothes and show me your tan. I have to admit that I'm not very proud of what I did, but I had no choice. I have to admit that at that moment, everything was hanging by a thread. I am absolutely certain that Amy, apart from sunbathing naked in Spain, had behaved herself. After all, her loyalty had been tested enough in South Wales. I never told Amy that I spent a lot of time there as a kid, and I certainly wasn't going to tell her that the guy who picked up Jill when they first got there was a distant relative and one of my oldest and best friends. And I certainly wasn't going to tell her that Dave's brother Thomas wasn't the only guy I asked to check how resistant Amy was to temptation. True, Thomas was the closest, and I admit I was very nervous that week. But Amy rejected all the others without even letting them get close. I think Amy's story about confusing Thomas with me when she was drunk that night is quite plausible, because when we were younger, people often mistook us for brothers. Even now, for that matter. Okay, what else could I have done? I suspected Jill was leading a promiscuous lifestyle, and Amy was glued to her like glue. What would have happened if I had told Amy to stay away from her sister? Yeah, she would have loved that, wouldn't she? Try getting between two close sisters. No, it was a decision she had to make for herself. Amy had to distance herself from Jill. I let Thomas and the boys go after Amy because I needed to see how she would behave when I wasn't around. I think she proved to me that she's worth it. Oh, if you're interested, I trust David and Thomas with my life and my wife. I once saved David's life when he fell off a horse when we were young. He says he'll never be able to repay me for that. Life goes on. Michael slowed down as he drove along the promenade to let a bus pass. Even on this dreary spring day, people were walking along the seashore. Dogs chased balls, splashed in the water, and shook themselves dry. Grandparents watching their grandchildren pushed strollers past flooded gardens and an artificial lake. Michael had always loved this place as a child. His parents often took him to the lake and let him steer a small rented boat around the island in the middle of the lake. He enjoyed steering the boat while his parents sat in the back, hugging and joking about his driving. God, those old boats smelled, and they were noisy. But he loved them, loved that time. Now there were only rowboats left on the lake. They were quiet and more environmentally friendly, but not as much fun, Michael thought. His parents divorced when he was 9. It was the biggest shock of his life. His parents had always seemed so close. Some of his friends' parents didn't even seem to like each other, but it was obvious that his parents adored each other. So it was incomprehensible why his mother had left everything for an affair with a workman who had come to build a fireplace. No wonder the project became bigger and more complicated, because he clearly had his eye on his mother. When she left, he watched her get into his van at the end of the long driveway. She seemed indecisive, her shoulders slumped. Looking back with Michael's adult eyes, she looked like the saddest woman in the world, not a woman consumed by passion. Through the eyes of a child, he just wanted his mother to be with him. He remembered how his father, still in his office suit, had ripped out the fireplace, and how loudly the stones had clattered. He had stacked all the stones on the driveway, and later they were used to create countless rock gardens in the neighborhood. The original fireplace was put back in place, and he never saw his mother again. Michael didn't see her often, but she was still his mother. She patiently endured his childhood whims, and then his teenage bitterness when they rarely saw each other. Michael finally turned into the parking lot of the nursing home overlooking the lake. It wasn't like the nursing home he had imagined. It was more like a high-class hotel. It wasn't like the sad municipal homes with hallways that smelled of cabbage. This house smelled of flowers, often fragrant lilies from fresh bouquets that stood in every room. In the foyer stood a grand piano surrounded by mirrors. Behind it was a ballroom with a stage where guest performers entertained the residents. The ground floor also housed various lounges, a games room, a library, and 2 restaurants. Living here cost thousands of pounds a month, even in the small rooms at the back of the building overlooking the garbage cans. The best rooms were like apartments with balconies overlooking the lake and beach. His father, Samuel, lived in one of these rooms. His father came from a wealthy family and, by all accounts, had a considerable talent for making money in business. He could easily afford to pay for a nursing home, even if he lived to be 200. He was already 82. He decided to move into a nursing home himself. As his mobility deteriorated, it became increasingly difficult for him to move around the large house. Otherwise, he was healthy and alert, so he didn't need care or a nurse. He just needed company. Samuel missed socializing and having people to talk to. Of course, they could have hired companions, but Samuel understood that it would be professional politeness. They would be paid to show interest and listen. He wanted people to interact with him because they wanted to. He wanted to talk to people his own age who understood what it was like when the body could no longer keep up with an active mind. So he decided to move into the Smuggler's Rest nursing home. It was the right decision. Although Michael was now very busy with his father's affairs, he was still able to visit him several times a week. They were very close and very similar. Samuel had raised him alone after the divorce. In those days, it was unusual for a father to get custody of a child. However, it was not unusual if the husband was rich and could afford the best lawyers, and the mother, without such financial support, was found guilty of cheating on her husband. In those days, women were treated very harshly. She was called a whore and a sinner. Michael was very harshly judgmental of his mother at the time, and nearly 50 years later, he still felt the same way. He never forgave her for betraying his father and family. He needed her, but she abandoned him for a rough guy who didn't have a penny to his name. Whatever he offered her must have been enough for her to leave her loving husband, her son, and their beautiful home to live in a trailer on a farm with no running water. Yes, he must have offered her something truly wonderful. He was snapped out of his memories by a polite cough from Jenny, his secretary. "Sorry," Michael said. "I got distracted." "Where's Dad? Is he in his room or one of the halls?" "No," Jenny replied. "He's in the minivan. He went to the store with your mom. They'll be back in about 15 minutes. It took Michael a few seconds to process what he had heard. "What do you mean, my mom?" "My dad divorced my mom 48 years ago. Whoever she is, she's definitely not my mom." Jenny looked anxiously at Michael, who had suddenly become so upset. He was usually such a kind and gentle person. She didn't want to upset him. The manager, Mr. Jennings, approached them. "Jenny is right. Mr. and Mrs. Jones left together to go shopping." "Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Marcia Jones?" "Yes," replied Mr. Jennings. "Your mother recently moved in with us. Your parents spend a lot of time together. In fact, all their time. She booked one of our standard rooms at the back of the hotel, but Mr. Jones insisted that she move to his suite. He said she would like the view better. Are you all right, Mr. Jones? You look a little pale. Sit down. I'll call someone to bring you a cup of tea with extra sugar, I think." Michael entered the nearest hall, sat down on one of the very large and expensive sofas, and stared out the large panoramic window, barely making out the waterfront, the lake, and the beach. "Here you are, Mr. Jones. Would you mind if I called you Michael? By the way, I'm Jason. I can see you're in shock. I thought you knew your parents were together. I'm sorry Jenny acted so unprofessionally, but she did it completely innocently. She's a wonderful girl, he smiled, looking at the lovely Jenny. If he were 10 years younger, well, 20 years younger, he would gladly make her his Jenny Jennings. Shocked? My parents have been divorced for almost 50 years, Jason, so you could say that. I can't believe it. I've seen her from time to time over the years. As far as I know, my father hasn't seen her since he kicked her out of our house many years ago. After that, he raised me on his own. Although he did remarry when I was an adult. It didn't last long. He's been living alone for the last 20 years. And your mother? Jason asked quietly. Well, she left my father for another man, but he died soon after. I haven't seen her in 10 years. We lost touch after she was upset that she wasn't invited to my wedding. I was 46 when I married my wife. It was hard for me to trust relationships after what happened to my parents. Fortunately, I finally found the right woman, and by the time I was 50, I was the father of 2 children. Yes, I've seen the boys when they came to visit Grandpa Sam. He's very proud of them and of you. He talks a lot about you and your beautiful wife. He calls her the daughter he never had. My wife Ava loves all the attention he gives her and feels the same way about him. She really wanted Dad to move in with us, but he refused and chose this option as the easiest for everyone. So your mom never got to see your little family? No, although she knows about them. I don't keep in touch with her, but I'm close to her sister, my Aunt Sue. I told her she could show her photos, but I don't want anything to do with her. Now I understand. What do you understand? Well, before she moved out of one of our small standard rooms, all the surfaces and most of one wall were covered with photos of you and your sons. She also kept a photo of your father when he was young by her bed, although we could still recognize him. Are you saying you encouraged this reconciliation, Jason? No, quite the opposite, Michael. We were afraid Samuel would be upset that his ex-wife was living here. Of course, he's one of our privileged guests and had been living here before Mrs. Jones moved in. If he had been upset about anything, we would have discreetly asked Marcia to leave. So why didn't you? Well, as soon as I was informed, I went to talk to your father and, well, What? Let's just say I discovered that Mr. and Mrs. Jones had come to an understanding on their own. Michael looked at Jason's red face, which refused to meet his gaze. Are you saying you caught my parents in bed, Jason? Yes, well, I was afraid he had fallen, and I heard moaning, so I used my key. I'm not innocent. I understand that some of our more active residents sneak around the hallways at night. However, this was the first time I had witnessed it myself. I apologize. Well, Jason, I hope you're well paid. That's all I can say, Michael snorted. You're not happy about this news apart from the shock? No, I'm not happy that my parents have reconciled after so many years, and I wonder about my mother's motives. Many women would do much worse for a nice apartment and a view like that, and unfortunately I am already familiar with my mother's low moral standards. However, your dissatisfied expression when you told the story amused me greatly. Yeah, well, Jason said, it wasn't the best moment of my life, and it was certainly a shock. So my mother kept all the photos her aunt gave her? She put them in frames and transferred some of them to large canvases, which she hung on the wall. Well, Michael said, that makes me happy that she still cares. Did my father see her room? Yes. When he asked her to move in with him, he was particularly touched by the photo that stood by her bed. Oh, here's the minibus. I'll leave you. You'll want to talk to them. Michael turned and looked at his father coming down the steps behind the minivan. His mother was charming as always, her short hair now gray rather than blonde. Despite the diamond-encrusted cane she held in her hand, she was still slim and held her head high. When his father turned in his seat, he smiled at Marcia, and she looked at him with love. It was the same look Michael remembered from his childhood, the same look she had given his father at the stern of the boat on the lake many years ago. Michael suddenly felt angry. Why now? Why couldn't they forgive each other after all these decades? He was over 50 now, and he was too old to start his own version of the parent trap for seniors. All these years he had prayed for his parents to get back together. He had prayed to God and even asked Santa. But it was all in vain. Too late, he thought. It was all too late. "Michael," Sam said, rolling up in his wheelchair, "I heard you were here. What a nice surprise. How are the boys? Did they win the football game?" "Are you alone, Dad? Where's Mom? She's a master of disappearing, isn't she?" "It's not like that, son. I know this is a shock to you, but let me explain." Michael sat silently until he suddenly said, "Yes, tell me, I need to hear it." "I'm sorry for how I behaved all these years. I'm sorry for what I did." "You have nothing to be sorry for. It was all her." "Yes, I know very well what your mother did. It broke my heart. I thought it was unforgivable. I loved her so much that I couldn't forgive her. I kicked her out and refused to have anything to do with her. She hurt me too much. She left us, abandoned us. But she didn't want that. She wanted to stay with you, with me, but I was so angry. I was so hurt that I didn't want to listen. The betrayal was an insurmountable obstacle for me. It was the end, even though I loved her, even though I knew she was sorry. I couldn't forgive her. At the time, I was sure I was doing the right thing. By the time I realized I had made a mistake, it was too late. I didn't get into another relationship for a long time. You know how those ended. It wasn't their fault. They loved me, but they weren't your mother." "Dad, are you seriously saying that for the last 50 years you've been pining for a woman who betrayed you?" "No, not entirely. I've gotten over it to some extent. I've been successful in life, but it's true that I never stopped loving her. I've never stopped regretting that I couldn't find a shred of compassion for her in my heart. She hurt me, but I was too cruel to her. I took everything away from her, her friends, her family, her status. But most of all, I took you away from her. That was the cruelest thing of all. I punished her. But it's all her fault. She made a mistake, one mistake. Sleeping with another man is not a mistake. It's a choice. Well, it was a choice she quickly regretted. He got her drunk one afternoon. I know she shouldn't have been in that situation. I know she did wrong, and drunkenness is no excuse. But she was manipulated. I should have protected her, and I didn't." "Dad, why are you blaming yourself? Is it because you're so lonely here that you're desperately looking for company?" "No, I wasn't lonely even before she came. Moving here was the right decision. It's very simple. I still love her. My life would be better with her. I don't have much time left, and I don't want to waste it. I want to be with the woman I love again before it's too late." "Dad, it was just a drunken fling that turned into a relationship. Have you forgotten that? I didn't give her a choice. She had no choice but to leave with him. I made sure she had no one to turn to. I punished everyone but him, and that's my biggest regret." "I don't know what to say. I need to talk to Mom." "She's at the bar. I think she needs a drink." Michael looked at his watch and sighed. It's not even noon yet. Samuel laughed. "When you get old like the people in this house, time doesn't matter. We enjoy life while we can. Just don't judge so harshly, Michael. You take after me. I was the same, and look where it got me. Us." Marcia Jones sat in a quiet corner of the bar, sipping a large glass of rosé wine. It was obvious she had been crying. Even after everything that had happened, it was hard for Michael to see his mother upset. He handed her his handkerchief. "Just like your father. He always carries a real handkerchief with him." "How are you, Mom?" "I'm glad to see you. I'm very happy to see your father again, to spend some time with him. And I'm very afraid that you won't approve." "When did you ever care about my opinion?" You haven't paid any attention to me since I was 9 years old." Marcia took a deep breath. "That's not true. I've always cared about you and loved you. The last 10 years of not seeing you have almost killed me. I know I let you down, and I know I don't deserve this, but I want you to love me again." Michael sighed and rubbed his hands absently on his thighs. "I've always loved you, Mom. I just don't like you very much. It's funny that I didn't want you at the wedding because I felt like I had to choose between you and Dad. I chose him and lost you forever. And now you two are living together like young lovers, as if the last 50 years never happened. I never stopped loving Samuel. He has always been the love of my life. I'm not ready to lose him again. I can't leave him. Not even for you." "Then why? People don't cheat on the ones they love." "I understand that. I've had decades to think about why I did what I did. I knew I was attractive back then." "You were beautiful," Michael said simply. "Well, your father always said so. Jeff worked at our house and we got to talking. He made it clear that he found me attractive and flirted with me while I brought him cups of tea. I admit I liked the attention. It seemed harmless. One afternoon, he took a bottle of wine out of his bag, and I gave in. That's no excuse, but he knew exactly what he was doing. At first, I even tried to refuse, but in the end, I gave in to temptation. It was just easier to give in. Afterwards, I was so ashamed. I scrubbed myself clean in the shower. I hated it. Hated that he had used me and that I had given in so easily. Before that, I had only known your father's love, and now all I had was sex, without love, and I felt dirty. That's how your father found us. I was in the shower, and Jeff was lying on the bed in the guest room with a big smile on his face. It was obvious what had happened. Your father didn't let me explain. He didn't let me tell him how sorry I was and why he should forgive me. I didn't deserve an explanation. I didn't deserve his forgiveness. But in the end, you ended up with Jeff in that little van, so I guess you didn't hate him that much. Yes, that was my biggest mistake. When your father kicked me out, Jeff was waiting at the door. I shouldn't have gotten into his van. What was I thinking? He said he'd take me to the train station. Of course, I ended up in his van, but I didn't sleep with him for a while. When I did, it was punishment for what I'd done, for what I'd lost. All these years, I've wondered if there was a chance for forgiveness if I hadn't gone with him and kept walking. I was so stupid and only made things worse. I had no one, but I foolishly clung to the man who was the reason for my downfall. In the end, we settled into some kind of relationship. I think Jeff felt guilty in his own way. There was no love, at least not on my part. When Jeff was drunk, he would say he loved me, but never when he was sober. Soon after that, he died in that accident in his van. By that time, your Aunt Sue had started talking to me again. She found me a small apartment and a job as a secretary. It was only much later that I realized it was your father. His business acquaintance gave me the job, and his money went toward the deposit on the apartment. In the end, he did care about me a little. So, how did you end up here? Your pension won't last more than a few months. I won 100,000 pounds in the lottery. I decided that with that money, I could live here for a few years without worrying about food, housing, or care. The money wasn't wasted. I was so lonely, you see. Even if I didn't make any friends, I could watch people, be among them, not be alone. And then you saw your father? Yes, I thought my heart would jump out of my chest. I was waiting for his anger, his contempt, but he just smiled at me. He looked at his friends and said, "Excuse me, I'll be back in a minute. I need to talk to my wife." He told them I was his wife. Imagine, after 48 years of dreaming that I was still his, to hear it from his lips so easily, as if he really meant it. "I think he really does mean it," Michael said. "He still loves you. Apparently, no woman can compare to how he remembers you. But you ruined his life, yours and mine, until I met Eve. How does that Larkin poem go? They ruined you, your mom and dad, and you two certainly ruined me." Samuel listened silently and drove up to Marcia. You need to remember the next line of that poem, son. They didn't mean to, but they did. None of our mistakes were meant to hurt you, but we both regret that they did. You're 25 years older than we were when we made those mistakes. You're a mature man. So will you support us when you get over the shock? Michael drummed his fingers on the table for a while. His gaze was fixed on another bouquet of flowers behind his parents. Finally, he spoke. Whatever I say, nothing will change. You've both made it clear that you don't want to split up again. So my objections will simply fall on deaf ears. It seems you've both effectively rewritten history. I'll go along with your version if it makes you happy. I can pretend, but you both need to know that I don't believe it. You've created a scenario in which Mom is the victim of a predator who rejected her at first and then gave in to make his life easier. To make it easier to have fun on the side, Mom, you forget that I witnessed part of that scenario. I know how far you went in your flirting. Maybe you got away with it at the golf club dances when Dad was busy with business. His friends knew not to go too far. They knew you weren't serious. Jeff was a different man, wasn't he? If he thought you wanted it, you got it. Maybe you didn't like it when you got it. Maybe you felt ashamed and dirty. I believe that, but you were still a married woman who flirted inappropriately with a stranger, decided to sleep with him, and then live with him. We all know that, son, Samuel said. Haven't we paid for it all these years? Can't you just forget about it? It's in the past. Can't we just leave it in the past? Oh, I'll forget about it. I said I'd pretend. I'll even take Eva and the boys to Grandma and Grandpa's tonight after tea. I'll play my part well, and in time, maybe I'll even be grateful to you for getting back together. I just wanted you both to know that I'm not going to rewrite my history, even if I can try to look to the future. Thank you, son, Samuel said. You're better than we deserve. Michael stood up to leave. He always kissed his father on the top of his head when he left. Today he hesitated before doing the same to his mother, then quickly left the bar. He was expected at the office soon, and he needed to talk to Eva and maybe hug her before getting down to business. As he pulled out of the parking lot, Michael looked at the lake and remembered the young couple and their little boy in the boat many years ago, and he smiled.